But yeah, cool. We're on. We're live.
Right, welcome. This is the Mind the Stigma podcast. This is from the Men's Mind Project. This is our first one and our first pilot episode. Hopefully, we get this one right. We shall see. But let me introduce myself. My name's Tom Perry. I'm the founder and director of the Men's Mind Project, which is a community-based company which is tackling men's mental health. We decided to do a podcast as another way to reach guys and girls really and talk about the problem in hand, which is obviously mental health, share our own experiences and kind of go from there really. And
Yeah.
we do a lot of talks to schools and at businesses, and we kind of just want to expand it a bit. And I was very lucky to be able to team up with the RBLI and get a venue sorted, and where we'll be doing weekly podcasts, hopefully.
Yeah.
And yeah, just go a bit from there really. So this is a bit of a mock up today, bit of an insight to what we want to do, and then after this we will start doing probably subjects. So we might cover depression, PTSD, panic disorders, stuff like that. And if there's anything you want us to cover, please obviously let us know. But we will be putting this out and then we will leave comments so people can leave their opinions in there and anything they want to see us cover, like we said. But yeah, that's me really introduced. And my co host, I'll
Cool.
get him to say a little bit about yourself and then we'll go from there.
Cool. So yeah, welcome all to the podcast. Pleasure to be here. Mind the Stigma was an idea obviously that Tom came to me with, and I sort of really ran with it as well. So I work for the RBLI. I'm part of the welfare team here, part of something called the Step In program. It's a program that works with predominantly males and females that have left the military, potentially with complex PTSD, with housing issues, monetary issues, just quite severe homelessness potentially as well. So obviously it aligns really nicely with what Tom's doing, what I do, and this podcast really for me, especially when Tom came to me for something, an outlet for us to both talk about and discuss men's mental health, but just in general the mental health spectrum, um, and just people's sort of views and opinions and life stories around that mental health. So I'm really looking forward to it. The RBLI is a massive sort of organisation for me that really pushes that. Obviously, with Tom coming to us recently to present, and since then I've gone to obviously I've come along to some of your meetings and stuff like that. It's been fantastic. It's great help. But yeah, this is something I really want to push. So obviously throughout the coming weeks, like you said, Tom, I want to really look at all the individual subjects, all the different parts of mental health, even medication, whether it be around their help from their doctor, whether it be social stigmas, anything. And I think that's, like Tom was saying at the beginning, is something that we're both passionate about, is getting that message out there of not just what we've gone through, but trying to get other people's message out there who might not have been heard. So that's my point of view on that.
Yeah.
So
I mean that's just kind of what we want to do. We want to give a platform for people to be able to go in and talk about their own issues and sometimes people might be like, well, why would I want it broadcast? But sometimes people just want to talk and they just want people to listen.
yeah,
And this is a perfect platform to be able to do that with.
yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, I mean, hopefully the next upcoming weeks, will be good and we'll get some good topics.
Yeah,
We've got
100%.
some great guests lined up who want to come in. So
Yeah,
once we can get that sorted out, it's going to be a great
yeah. I'm
thing.
excited
So
to see. I'm excited to see who this can reach and what it can do for other people. And I think that's something else I want to see. Hopefully, if you guys bang something in the comments around, your thoughts and feelings about what you heard, what you saw, maybe if you've reached out to someone, like if you've reached out to Tom or myself for help, or reached out to other organisations, which we'll mention at the end. And that's the whole point of it. It's signposting. It's about making things and normalizing it. Normalizing men's mental health, or just generally helping other people with their mental health. And yeah, I'm really excited for it, man.
yeah, I mean, when I was at work the other day, I was
Mm,
talking about it and talking about doing all this.
yeah,
And someone was saying to me, "Why would you advertise other organisations when you're an organisation yourself?"
yeah,
And like I was saying, really and truthfully,
yeah,
Tesco's and Asda's are supermarkets.
yeah,
They're competing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
We're not competing. We're all going for the same goal, and the
yeah,
end result is to help people with their mental health.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
support them
100%.
in any way we can. So why would we want to, keep that to ourselves? And,
Yeah,
like you say, at the end of this, we'll have a listing of different organisations about the Samaritan's Mind and stuff like that. And I hope over the next coming weeks as well and months, we could probably get people on from the organisations to talk about their organisations as well.
yeah, exactly.
It's all about helping each other out.
I think that's it. And when you think about this end of the spectrum, when we're talking about that third sector, the charitable sector, it's all about sharing knowledge. You know what I mean? It's about sharing experiences, what went well, what didn't go well. For yourself, being that it's a couple of years in now, it's doing really well, but now looking at what else you can do, and I think that's what men's mental health needs, and mental health sort of services in general need to continually look to just progress and move forward. And I think for yourself, I think that's what you continually want to do, and that's, like I say, it's very much in line with what myself, the RBLI, the team that I work with, always strive to do. So I think, like I said, when you came to me with that idea and you was like, I need a venue, it married up 100% with what we do, but also how I feel and about even your group and about my own mental health. So yeah, definitely. But what I was going to ask Tom actually is about, like, where did this initial thought come from? Like, where did this thought or process come from to start a pod in your sort of, where does that come from for you?
Well, the podcast has been in the back of my mind for quite some time, but
Mm,
going back a couple of years ago before I started this, which is over a couple of years ago now,
yeah.
I was I would never have thought I'd be doing any of this.
Hmm.
I mean, if people who know me know that I was very shy, very reserved. I wouldn't really talk much in
Yeah.
large groups, and I certainly wouldn't be going out and doing talks about my mental health.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had a really, really bad turn just over 2 years ago, and unfortunately, it left me basically ill for a very long time. And I was panic disorders. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't leave the house. My depression was at its height, and I mean, I'm not even gonna lie. I mean, the thoughts that was going through my head was unreal,
Yeah.
and I just didn't want to be here. And I managed to reach out to the doctors, and reaching out to the doctors was hard as in itself. And
Hmm.
I was really lucky, and I've got to give them a lot of credit. I was seen very, very quickly. I mean,
Yeah.
they told me of about 12 to 13 week wait. Within 2 weeks, I was having my first therapy session, and that
Fantastic.
was really great. And when I came out the other end of it, and I say come out the other end of it, you never really come out of it, but you
No,
kind of
yeah,
learn to deal. And
of
when I
course.
came out of it, it got me thinking, why are guys so ashamed to speak up and so scared to approach? Because it was really hard for me to reach out to the doctors. That was hard in itself. To reach out and talk to a therapist, that was really hard. I had to
Yeah.
tell them things that I've never told anyone,
Yeah.
just and just so they can make heads or tails of what's going on. And it's very made me very vulnerable,
Mm.
and yeah, it just made me really kind of like I just didn't know how to go about it.
Gosh,
And then
yeah.
when I came out like I say, when I came out the other end, and I thought, why is this happening? I thought, I'm going to start a Facebook group. Let's see what happens. Started a Facebook group that day.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Within a day, we had 20 members join.
Cool.
By the end of the week, we had 200. And it was
Fantastic.
just
Yeah.
I just kept advertising it, putting it out there, putting posts out saying a group for men to come and have a talk. Confidential
Yeah.
Chatham House rules, as they say.
Yeah.
What says goes in the room stays in the room.
Yeah.
And it just went from there. And in the end, I realised there was such a need for it, and I got more passionate about it, and I got more comfortable talking about it myself.
Yeah. So do you think um do you think it's a bit of self therapy that you've started, and it's continual then? So obviously you've got them
Mm.
therapies, through the doctor and that, and then what you're doing now is continually adapting your own therapy, do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to say it. I used to say this is my therapy.
Yeah.
Doing this is my therapy. Reaching out to the guys, getting them to reach out to me as well.
Hmm.
Running the support group on a Monday,
Yeah.
going out doing the talks. That's a big one for me. I mean, seeing the people's faces, seeing how you can change. I mean, you've been
100%.
on the
Yeah,
receiving end
yeah,
of one
yeah.
of the talks,
100%.
and
Yeah.
it can be quite powerful with my eyes. And
Hmm.
we don't have a script. Like the podcast, we're not going to have a script for the podcast. We just talk, and when you're reading a script, it can sound robotic. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we just kind of want to go off the cuff. And
Fantastic.
but it's kind of gone stronger and stronger as the years have gone on. And we've been going 2 years now, just touching 2 years now.
Yeah.
And the response has been amazing. I mean, we have a lot of guys come forward asking for help. You know, a lot of ladies come forward as well asking for advice as well, and you know, we're happy to help.
That's the one key thing, isn't it? Is that I think obviously, like Tom's saying, is like it touches on like your main point is that it's around men's mental health for you,
Mm,
like for what you was talking about, and you want to be an advocate for that, and you know, it's a big supporter of it. But I also think it's like you said, it's not about staying in your lane. Sometimes you've got to step outside of that, and if you know females do approach in relation to their mental health, especially towards your group currently, it's you know, it would be a shame not to be able to signpost them individuals to the right
mm,
people. And I think that's something that I think is the one good thing about the charitable sector is that there isn't, because there isn't any profit in it and there isn't a target. There's no, you know, there's no pressure on that individual to do a yes, no, or the criteria. They can then signpost to the right individuals and not worry about them not meeting targets. And you know, unfortunately, if you go private or private healthcares or stuff like that, you potentially might be in the realm of that. It's not quite for us, and I think that's something where yourself you're almost becoming a another avenue for people to reach out to, and obviously that's a stress in itself for you, I bet is having that. Do you feel like you have a weight on your shoulders as well? Like, do you feel like you've created more pressure for yourself, or do you think it's a pressure that you like because you feel like you're helping others?
I think it's a bit of both. I
Mm,
mean, I'll be honest. I mean, some days the rewards are so great, you know,
mm,
but then there is times where you think, "Cool, there's a lot going on now. You know, there's a lot needs to be done."
yeah,
And you know, there's only a small team of us at work. You know, like
hmm
well, volunteer. We're all volunteer for it,
yeah,
and so sometimes it'll be a bit, you know, bit of pressure, and you know, I don't mind admitting that.
yeah, of course,
But it's the end result that you get from when you help people out,
yeah,
and you kind
of
of
course,
see the way people kind of come out of it, and how they get. You know, we've had guys walk in the group who've been on their knees, like
yeah,
us, you know, and they've literally been on their knees begging for help, and now you'll see them. You wouldn't even believe it's the same bloke that turned up.
yeah,
You know, I
yeah,
mean, you come to the Monday night group, you've
yeah.
seen the guys, you know the difference. You know, people can change.
Yeah, I've seen the, you know, and I think that's the point, isn't it? It's you know, in the grand scheme of things, your group allows an option which is to talk, which actually is one of the it's like the easiest therapy that you could give someone, you know, as an option. Like talking is such a natural thing in the sense that we to communicate with anyone, to do anything, you have to be able to talk. But when it revolves a certain subject, which in this sense is mental health, is that it becomes really difficult for that to become a subject matter that people can easily talk about. And I think allowing it to that group where it's you know anything goes, whatever's said is said, you know, support can be taken from there and vice versa. It allows them people to delve into a discussion point that they would normally not want to discuss with anyone else.
Mm.
You know, you put them in a room full of strangers and it's weird how men just seem to be able to open up to strangers more than their family and friends because you know we don't really judge each other as blokes in that way. It's different. It's a different type of judgment. But when you're around strangers, your judgment sort of, I don't know, it changes. I don't seem to judge people in that way. I seem to be able to allow people to look at me as an individual, especially in your groups, allow to look at me as an individual and not just as Alex, the welfare officer, or
Mm.
Alex, the you know veteran, or whatever it might be. There's not that I don't know most of the people in your group's background, work, names, half of them as well. You know, it's they're a person, and I just let them offload, and it's quite nice because you can then see like the almost truth behind what they're saying, that the actual real true meaning of why they're there comes out rather than I just feel quite low or I've got bad anxiety. It's actually there's a situation rather than a diagnosis as a situation. Can you help me? What's the support out there? And I think that's something that I noticed when I was there is actually that people grow as an individual rather than they're dealing with their problem in a real functional way, like real simple way, but they also grow because they're learning a skill again that potentially they just put to the wayside, which is just communication. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see your group grow because when you came down to the RBLI, it was for me and Maria, who Maria is my colleague, by the way, Maria Gallego, been working for the RBLI for God knows how long. She's basically a dinosaur, bless her. She would kill me for
Sure, I
saying that.
love you for that.
Yeah, but she, nevertheless, is an amazing welfare officer. Found Tom's group on Facebook and just said, Alex, mate, these guys do chats, they do talks, discussions. We need to get them down. It's another option for the lads. you know, and for our welfare, you know, we're always looking to work and work with other people. And that was something straight away. She was like, these guys just, they want to get involved. So I was like, yeah, cool, get them down. And it was the biggest, I think it had the best reaction to anyone we've ever had in the building. You know, we've had loads of different people there, but the reaction was really raw because, you know, yourself and Malcolm came in, and obviously Malcolm's someone that we'll mention throughout the podcast, and I'm sure throughout time we'll hopefully get him on. But the discussion was so raw, it hit home really quickly that there's no bullshit. You know,
Mhm.
this isn't,
Mm.
we're not messing about now. This is the rawest place you went to. You know, talking about suicide attempts, talking about potential overdoses, talking about self harm. We're talking about proper blokes, like men, working class men that taken to the lowest point. I think that's why we got the best reaction. That's why inevitably why then I then showed up that following Monday at your group, because I was like, I respect the rawness of that. And
Mm.
that's once again something that I was like to Tom about this podcast, is that we need to stick with that. Like that needs to be how this is. Like, I don't want it to be scripted. You know, if there's a subject matter, great. But if not, if someone goes off and starts to talk about their issues, or you know, and it highlights it for someone else, done. That's job done for me. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing what your group does, and I think you should applaud yourself for where you're at now. And I think more people should start to think about what their impact within their community could do. And I think that's what you did. I think you thought about the wider community before yourself almost. And in doing so, then, you know, you become like an advocate for mental health within your community,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. So,
Yeah, I mean, when we came to do this talk, I remember when Maria got in contact and asked us to come down.
yeah,
It was probably the hardest talk I've done. I mean, we've done quite a few now, and this was the hardest one because obviously we were walking in a room full of veterans, you know,
mm,
and it was an honour to be able to do a talk in front of people who, you know, who served the country,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I've seen things that I probably could never have possibly imagined. But so talking of going in there, talk about your own issues of mental health and that
yeah,
you know you kind of think, well, these guys have probably seen some worse things than I've ever seen, or gone through some bad
yeah,
things than I have, you know. So it's kind of a bit daunting really. But
100%.
then the response you get from the gentlemen and the ladies, you know, we had ladies in there as well,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's amazing because you can really see you kind of like touch people's hearts with your story.
hmm,
And I mean, we obviously had one guy in the, obviously we won't mention names, but one
yeah,
guy in the group who emailed me a real nice email, basically saying that it made him realise that maybe he needs to get help,
yeah,
and he went out and he got help, and I think he
yeah,
was having therapy and that,
yeah,
and he reached out, and
mm,
we've had it before where people have come forward and said they've spoke to their wives or their other halves, and
yeah.
after they've been to one of our talks because it's kind of given them the confidence to go forward. And I think that's the big thing, really, is giving people the confidence to talk to their families and friends
Yeah,
and being the voice, giving them that voice so they can go out and talk.
I think
Um,
that's exactly that, Tom. Is that it's enabling someone or giving them an idea and letting them run with it. You know, whether that be come to the group and discuss it there, or actually a ping like that little light bulb moment where you just go, oh shit, it's everything's hit the fan now.
mm,
But you've now like initiated it for me. You've said this is happening. I need to do something about it now. Like, you know, Tom's managed to sort it out, or is still sorting out. It's not perfect. It's not quite right yet. It's still struggling, but it's all right to actually struggle, but I need help struggling. You know what I mean? If someone's hand holding me a little bit, that's great. Or you know what I mean, signpost me good. But I think that's like the most important thing, isn't it? It's just allowing and showing someone that it's all right. It's okay. With that whole phrase, it's okay not to be okay, is exactly that. It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to not get any help with that. You know what I mean? I think you'd be doing yourself a massive disjustice. And that's what you guys were kind of talking about to me, is you're going to do yourself a massive disjustice if you don't even try to fix it, or try to analyze it in a way where you normalize it. You know, you might not ever get better. And you know, you was very honest to say, you know, weeks before that conversation at the RBLI was, you know, I had another attempt, you know, um, yeah, I failed attempt at that, but either way, it was in there, it was implanted still. It's still something you're battling with and playing with, and I think that was a really strong point for us, because it once again normalized it. It raised that awareness that you are, even though you're trying, doesn't mean that you can't fail still, if that makes sense. And it's not a failure, it's just a working point, isn't it? It's something, it's a point for you to start and finish, but you know, you're never going to get to the finish very quickly. You might just keep going back and forwards to the start and keep going. I think it's just like it's like test and adjust, isn't it? So,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people when they're obviously
mm,
in that bad place, they do anything they got nowhere to go. They've got nowhere to turn to. They think they're the only ones going through it, and I think a lot of things when you do talks or you do stuff like this, and
mm,
they listen to it and they realise, oh, wow, I ain't the only one suffering. Yeah, we might not be suffering with exactly the same things, but we're suffering along
yeah,
the same lines of stuff. And I think that's kind of like a big thing for blokes as well.
mm,
I mean, it's just kind of like to know that they're not alone,
yeah,
and it's, there is a stigma behind men's mental health,
massive, yeah, of course,
and it's all about that macho image. And the thing is, like I always say, you could be the hardest bastard in the room, you know what
yeah.
I mean? You really can. You could be able to fight any bloke that walks in that door, but you still be suffering,
Oh,
And I think
massively.
that's the thing to let people know is
Mm,
just because you're suffering doesn't mean you're weak. I
no,
mean, in fact, I think if someone's suffering, it shows a lot of strength to be able to kind of like continue with it,
yeah, of
And I
course,
mean, there's some people could be in some dark places with it. I mean,
yeah,
I've been there myself. I don't mind admitting. I mean, now, but
mm,
I mean, years ago, I would never have spoke about my issues. I mean, I've been
no,
suffering my mental health 16, 17 years.
yeah,
You
wow,
know,
yeah,
I mean, my first attempt of my life was when I was 16-year old. You know,
yeah.
and
What brought that
I
into
mean,
play then?
trying to think about it, really. I mean,
Because that's a real that for me that and that's actually a key point age wise, isn't it? 16. So 16, you've puberty's really hit home now. Like socially, you're trying to adapt yourself to fit in, which obviously nowadays is like it's gone right up there. Um, but 16 is a prominent age, isn't it? It's where you start to become the person that you probably are gonna continue to be potentially, or the characteristics might stay the same now. So you're building your character's firming up a little bit now. So yeah, where did that? So going back to that, then where did that start in your head? Like what was the idea? What triggered that? Or do you know what the trigger was?
I mean, like I said, I've suffered such a long time with it. I mean, but I'll probably looking back at it, I'll probably can pinpoint the time when my mental health started deteriorating when I was a kid. I mean, I remember I lost my nan,
Mm,
my great nan, should I say, years
yeah,
ago, and that was kind of like a trigger point for me. I think from that moment on, my mental health deteriorated after that. And I'm not saying that was the main cause of it. I probably had it coming, but I think that really kick-started it off.
yeah,
And when I was obviously saying 16, and I I attempted to take my own life,
mm,
I was, my mum and dad didn't even know. But my dad never found out. I mean, my dad's passed away now, bless him.
yeah.
But my dad never found out. My mum only found out a few months ago when I did a talk at her college.
Wow.
And I had to obviously, I want to
Yeah,
be
that's tough.
truthful to the guys that I'm doing a talk to,
Mm,
and the girls as well. And so I've said about it, but I pre-warned her. I said you're going to hear some things that you never known. So just try to bear that in
that's
mind.
so raw though. Like
And
that's brave for you to come out in front of and that's one that it just highlights again, doesn't it? That you can talk to random people and tell them like the darkest thing that's ever happened to you at a young, but not your mum, And I think,
I think it's a family thing. I mean, my
yeah,
mum, like I pre-warned her. I said, look, you're going to hear some things that you've never known, but just
yeah,
please, bear in mind that it's hard to talk about it, but I am talking about it now.
yeah,
And so so I said about being 16, being in Maidstone, where it was standing on the bridge.
yeah,
I mean, it was late at night. I mean, I couldn't even remember what time it was. I remember it being late. It was dark, so
mm,
and I could remember that she's standing on the bridge and leaning over and looking down at the floor, well, the river, shall I say,
yeah,
because it's over the river, and thinking that's all I had was literally a vision of hitting that water and it kind of all going blank.
yeah,
But the only thing that stopped me was the fact that two ladies asked me if I was okay. They literally didn't react to the fact that there's some boy leaning over the bridge. They basically just said to me, "Are you okay?"
yeah.
And I'm like,
Brought you back
yeah,
into earth a little bit.
yeah, okay." And I can remember kind of being a bit stunned and a bit kind of like, "Oh." I mean, I was a shy kid even back then. I mean, I was a shy kid, and
Mm,
so talking was hard for me anyway. So I'm like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. And then all I remember is talking to these ladies, and then I can't remember the exact point, but at one moment I was at the other end of that railing. I was on their side,
okay,
and they never mentioned the fact that I was standing on that bridge. They never mentioned. I mean, they were. I think they was obviously going clubbing, dressed up to the nines.
yeah,
I mean, they must have not been no older than 20 years old or something like that.
mm,
And they just spoke to me, and they just said, everything all right. And I literally, I can't remember how long I was with him for, but I
Mm.
can remember that it was just somebody there listening to me was kind of a big relief for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I feeling ashamed to talk to him. I mean, and it was very powerful for me, and it kind of put me back into perspective. I went home, walked back indoors, said hello to my mum and dad, had my dinner, went to bed, but never spoke about it again.
Do, thinking of on that point, like obviously, I don't want to drag too much up because I just think like sometimes there's going to be like loads of points throughout the series of pods that we're going to do where obviously Tom's going to speak about his mental health and stuff he's gone through, and same with me as well. And I mean, God, there's enough there to do about 30 different series, and make a spin-off as well.
Yeah.
But either way, I think uh, I want to kind of like. So, did you feel like the knock-on effect of that not saying anything at the beginning, like just thinking about what we're trying to achieve here? Do you think that you not saying anything initially at the beginning has had a profound knock-on effect to where your mental health is at now?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the big thing is it's a build up. It's a pressure cooker. You
Of course.
bottle things up. It'll build up, build up, build up
Yeah.
until eventually you're going to go pop.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was. I mean, like I was saying, when I was younger, after that,
Mm,
I can remember feeling kind of like really light,
yeah.
kind of thing that I spoke about it. And don't get me wrong, after that point, I went back to my old ways. I didn't talk about anything. I mean, I was a major sufferer of anxiety. I mean, I
Mm,
was a kid that would always get really nervous in public, really nervous doing new things. I was scared of my own shadow,
yeah.
and so anxiety was a big part of my life. And then depression kind of come hand in hand with that. I mean,
Yeah.
and it was really horrible because you have a fighting battle. You have your anxiety and depression, and they're fighting because anxiety, you don't want to be on your own. You're
Yeah.
scared to be on your own. You're scared to be on, left. But then with depression, you don't want to be around no one. So
No.
you're basically constantly fighting that urge, and it's like literally being pushed and pulled from pillar to post. And it was really tough. I mean, through school years and that, the anxiety was unreal. And
Yeah.
I really, really suffered. And but as I got older, I went really kind of through a really good point
Mm.
where my life kind of seemed to really kind of straighten out. I went on antidepressants from the doctor, and
What age? What age was that started?
I started antidepressants by I think I was 16, 17 when
Wow.
I started, and I can remember I went on antidepressants, and life just seemed okay. I was going through life, and then it got to a point where I realised that I, f- I was a zombie kind of thing. I felt like I was a zombie looking back at
Yeah.
things. Really had no enjoyment in things. I was always tired. I was always groggy.
I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that felt that way as well. Because I know myself being medicated, you just become a bit of a you become a Walking Dead situation. Some for some people anyway, and I know that's probably one of the things when we cover that medication side of things. That's one of them things that I'm sitting there going, that's a really good point because so many people are scared to go on medication for the simple fact that they're like, I don't want to become a zombie, and that's literally everyone says the same line. And so, I mean, yeah, sorry, mate, yeah,
I mean, it was, and it all felt zombie fun. I remember coming
mm,
off tablets. I remember like my dad and my mum saying to me, you shouldn't just come off them, but I did, and I went cold turkey,
yeah, oh god, yeah,
and I did have a bit of a
yeah,
relapse, but then I managed to get out the other side of it, and I thought, yeah, life's great. I'm not on
yeah,
tablets. I felt a bit more awake, and and it is just generally been, and it was generally kind of a bit of it seemed plain sailing,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then I can remember kind of going for real good patches. I mean, I had some rough patches and then real good patches.
mm,
And then unfortunately, when my old man um, got ill,
yeah,
it was really hard for me. Really hard to me to kind of like like stay strong because obviously I was showing being strong for him. I mean, my dad unfortunately got a lung disease, COPD, and
shit,
he was diagnosed with it. And I think I think it's about 10 years from diagnosis to when he passed.
mm,
But I can remember the fear of when he was diagnosed with it, because we didn't know
yeah,
what it was. But the thing is, he was still working at the time. He was really healthy, really fit and healthy. And and he was like my role model
yeah,
because he was still working, he was still going out, and he was still doing the things, still running around with us kids. At the time. And then I remember throughout the years, obviously, it progressively got worse. And then I think it was a few years before he passed away, for maybe 5 years,
Yeah.
he just started getting really away. He couldn't work so much because he started getting breathless. And then I really noticed a change in him.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then he got progressively worse. And I mean, and that was a really hard point for me because I was remember being strong for my brother and my sister, and obviously my
Mm.
mum as well. And it was a really hard time for us all, really. But in my mind, I kind of blocked it to the point where tried to switch off. Yeah, he's ill, but he's not going nowhere. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I
of
kind of
course.
like try to live life normally. Go around and see him when I could and that. And eventually, it got worse and worse. And then he ended up in the RBLI in Gavanessa,
Okay.
and that was his final place where he went to.
Yeah.
And he was there for I can't even remember how long he was there for, but he was there for not very long. And unfortunately, we got a phone call saying that it's not going to be much time. We went up there, and unfortunately, he did pass away.
Yeah.
And but the thing with it, that was my set off point for when my mental health really started getting worse. Even
Hmm.
because from that point onwards, I bottled everything up. I didn't really cry. I cried obviously the day he passed. I cried.
Yeah.
I don't mind admitting. But then after that, I didn't really cry. I think I can even remember at his funeral not really crying to how I would have imagined myself to cry. I mean, I lost
Yeah.
my dad for Christ's sake, and
Yeah.
I can remember being like shaking at the start, walking his coffin down on my shoulder with my brother and my cousin and his brother,
Mm.
and I can remember kind of walking down and shaking, and my wife's. I remember hearing my wife's voice saying, "Oh, he's shaking, he's shaking." Like she getting really upset, and I can remember
Yeah.
being sad, but not really crying that much. And then obviously life went on. Unfortunately, people got to move forward, and I can remember I think I just bottled it up because I think it was 5 years later I got my mum a wedding present. It was a wedding video converted into a DVD.
Oh God.
And I sat and
Yeah.
watched it before I gave it to her for Christmas because I thought I just want to see it, see how much people's
Yeah. Yeah.
changed.
Of course.
And the thing with it was there were so many people in that video who are not around today. And then obviously I see my old man coming as well. And I looked and I heard his voice, and that was the first time I heard his voice in all them years.
Yeah. I
And
bet
and
that's
I
a
remembered it
yeah.
again, because in part of my mind I kind of forgot what he sounded like, and I remember hearing it, and I was so happy to hear his voice again. I
Yeah.
was so chuffed. I remember my boy was there, my eldest, and was saying, "Look, that's granddad. That is granddad." And he was only very young when he passed away.
Yeah.
And I can remember hearing, I thought, "Oh, great!" And then my missus went off to work. She was working nights at the time, and
Yeah.
my boy went to bed, and I literally remember I was sitting there, and the next thing I know, I was on the floor, and that was the triggering point of when my mental health really started to get bad. I mean, I was on the floor, I couldn't leave the house, ended up getting the ambulance called out, ended up
Oh
going
God.
to A&E, because I thought I was having a heart attack. My anxiety was through the roof,
Yeah.
and it was all because I kind of like didn't speak when I was feeling a bit down, didn't kind of like talk about my emotions as such, and I bottled it up. My wife didn't know what was going on. Now, she didn't know I was suffering half as bad. I mean, when this all came out, she would never known half the things. And she was so shocked that I was going through this on my own and not spoke about it.
Do you think when you think about that then, like now, obviously I know you're in a better place now. Like so when you think about the fact that your missus was so surprised that like going through the times you've had with the group so far and obviously all your experience yourself, is this a common thing you see as well? Do you see a lot of blokes that have relationships? And I mean, there'll be plenty of people hopefully that comment that will talk about this, is that will say, actually, that's my relationship. Even if the ladies and other blokes that come on and say, actually, that's my partner. My partner bottled it up for years. When I knew about it, it was when I knew about it. When I had to pick them up off the floor or cut them down, or you know,
I
it
mean,
was
that's a lot. That's 90% of people I speak to. That is generally the kind of story. The other halves don't really know a lot what's going on.
yeah,
They're scared to talk to the other halves.
yeah,
We basically kind of help them to get that, to help them talk to their other half.
yeah,
Let them
yeah.
know we've been there. I mean, like I say, my wife now, she understands me. She doesn't, she will admit she doesn't understand the mental health side to some point. She doesn't. She finds it hard to understand how I get into such a state like I can do.
Yeah,
But she understands me now. She knows that if I'm suffering, there must be a really good
must be
reason, and
something. Yeah,
and she knows to kind of like support me the best she
yeah,
can, and she doesn't judge me for it. I mean, but it's kind of like getting people's understanding of mental health,
That's the next thing, isn't it? It's kind of like, and I've felt this myself, is that, you know, I've got a reasonably new partner. We've been together. Well, I say we're a reasonably new partner. She'll probably kill me as well. Over a
if you're
year.
not in the next
Yeah,
podcast, you
yeah,
know
yeah,
why.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they'll just put a cardboard cutout of me, and it will just say dead. But yeah, so over a year, both suffer with mental health wise, but still don't understand each other's mental health, and this is why it's such an interesting thing because it's not about understanding the tag of, say, for instance, if you have an anxiety disorder, or you've got what X, Y, and Z. It's not about understanding that. It's understanding your person, and then how they react, and then almost sort of identifying the situations that you're putting them in as well. Because you go out with your family and friends, and this is what I find is that and last night was a great example. Went out. We was at a quiz night that we always go to most Thursdays, but it gets to a point where I think I've bottled my anxiety to about three-quarters away of a bucket, and I'm like, yeah, cool, I've got this on cap. And then it won't be anything that happens, but it could be a change in temperature, could be something someone said, it could be any, and it just starts to rise, and then I feel myself panic, and then my missus will kind of look at me and know that something's wrong. The problem is with me, it kind of comes out in a multitude of mixed emotions. It doesn't come out as like anxiety, having a meltdown on the floor. It looks like stressed, angry, fidgety, and it's such a weird thing to. That's why I say there's not one size fits all. If you say you have anxiety, the same thing's me. Our anxieties could look completely different, same as the people the other end of it. It's just this is why it's about, if you have a partner or your friends suffer, it's about identifying what makes them them. That's what makes their anxiety different to your anxieties, and then just the coping strategies, and definitely for you with your missus, like you said, and then we've discussed this before, is it's you grow. It's like a change in relationship, completely changed, isn't it? And I think being that I've been quite lucky being that it's a new relationship, that I can form that side of me and be very honest. But previous relationships and family and friends, I find it really difficult to. And then now I'm getting better, but I found it really difficult because I thought I stood for and still stand for that very manly-esque type lifestyle and being quite a strong individual, that whole men don't cry situation. I think it's so poisonous. It really has destroyed my perception of other people's mental health as well. I wasn't a massive advocate for mental health for years, didn't believe in it, didn't trust it, didn't like medication. And then when it hit me like a sack of shit, then I was like, oh crap. I was like, this is serious. Like, and then weirdly enough, started to identify with other people, and they were like, oh look, we're similar. Like, and it's such a weird thing, isn't it? Mental health, so it hits you in such weird ways that trying to explain it is just, it will take years, years and years and years, and sitting still with someone. So sometimes it's about recognizing the little movements, the triggers, the changing behaviors, the mood swings, and that's where, especially if you've got a partner, and this is where, like, hopefully people watch this podcast and go, I actually, I recognize that in my partner. That's something that I see, and actually maybe they haven't come forward as feeling that way, but maybe they might ask that question of them, and I think it's just about art. It's actually just communication that's key when this in the situation. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy just continually communicate through us as well, and for you guys the other end, is that we are just here to signpost about signs, symptoms, organisations, whatever it might be, to get the word out. So yeah, I mean, I'm a massive I'm a massive supporter of what you guys are doing, especially anyone that sort of listens into this podcast. I'm a massive supporter of anything you're doing to try and better yourself, whether it be just sitting and listening to this, talking, coming to Tom's meetings, reaching out to me and Tom, or even the wizard who sits the other side of this camera.
We haven't actually mentioned the wizard
No,
yet.
we should
I mean,
mention the wizard.
no,
He
we're a
is
team of
real.
three, really. You see us two here. We've got
Yeah.
someone behind the camera as well. But we'll talk about him up in the upcoming weeks.
He was far too good looking, basically, to put on this side of the camera. I felt my anxiety was getting bad. And I mean, I'm going to make a joke about my anxiety. But
Right.
yeah, I just
I
couldn't do it.
think we'll wrap up now.
Yeah,
I'll say anybody want us to cover any subjects, please leave it in the comments when we post it on social media. Thank you
yeah,
for
mate.
listening. Like I say, I'm Tom Perry, and this
Yeah.
is Alex.
Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.